and Happy New Year to him, is Steve Brisendine of MLSsoccer.com. Steve, welcome again, my friend.
Anthony, thanks again for having me on. Good to talk to you again.
Pleasure's all mine. We really appreciate your time, Steve. These comments are explosive. They hit right to the heart of the matter that's been going on with this player. You and I have discussed him the last year and a half. I still don't understand it. Scott French of MLSsoccer.com wrote a wonderful piece about what he said at the MLS Media Day, and I don't think it's no surprise to you or I.
Yeah, it's something that he's been, he's kind of been going around that the comments for, since middle of 2014 when he didn't get called up for the World Cup. And at the time, if you recall, I think he told me, look, I've been to a World Cup. I'm okay with it if I don't go again. But it seemed like he was still maybe leaving the door open and not burning any bridges. And this time the bridge is burned, and I can empathize with his frustration, because you look at the kind of year that he put together last year, especially, and not even to get a sniff. He's got to feel like that's not ever going to happen again with Klinsmann at the helm of the national team. Our friend Alan Henkel asked Jurgen point blank last year, what's the status with Benny? And Jurgen says there are others ahead of him. You know me, I don't agree with that. I would obviously say that Benny doesn't agree with it, and a lot of people don't agree with it. And he's playing the best, or he was playing the best ball of his career last year, and nothing. When they really could have used his skill set, especially at the Gold Cup. So Benny's always been an outspoken guy, plain-spoken guy, and I think he's just finally saying what he's been thinking for a long time and kind of been hinting at for a long time.
Steve, what are the reasons? Does anyone know what the reasons are why Jurgen Klinsmann has not called up Benny? I mean, to me, I said this to you at the World Cup in Brazil. He would have been a perfect guy coming off the bench, giving you 15, 20 minutes, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, a burst of energy, some real grit, some determination, some heart, and he would have helped Team USA. I don't understand why Jurgen is not giving this guy an opportunity. Another guy who I don't understand why Jurgen doesn't want to give an opportunity to is Dax McCarty. These are two heart and soulers. And these two guys, I tell you, Steve, I equal them to the days of Gennaro Gattuso in the 2006 World Cup win of Italy, where the guy didn't have a ton of talent, but he was a grinder, a heart and souler, and in the locker room, players loved him. And I think that's the case with Benny. Players love him, and I don't understand why Jurgen doesn't.
You mentioned Dax was another guy that Benny talked about. Talked about Lehigh, talked about Hedges. There's been other guys who, mystifyingly, are not getting called in. Look, I don't know if it's a personality conflict between Benny and Jurgen, if it's a personality conflict between Benny and other guys on that are national team regulars that Jurgen doesn't want to manage. But it is mystifying, especially, you look at I'm going to echo what he said, and I've said the same thing for quite some time. Your job as a manager is to be successful now and in the future, be successful now and build for the future. And it seems like everything is being loaded up for Russia 2018 at the expense of the last World Cup, at the expense of the Gold Cup this last summer. I don't get it. I honestly don't get it, and you have to wonder just how deep the personal animus goes. I mean, because you can't say form. The guy's in the best shape of his career, playing the best ball of his career. I mean, you saw some of those through balls he put to people last year. You saw some of the free kicks he was taking last year. He was out there just wrecking matches, match after match. If not for Giovinco and the season he had last year, I think he would have been the front runner for the MVP. And yet, no call. And now people say it's his age, but look at there are guys who are older than he. Beckerman's older than he is. Jermaine Jones is older than he is. DeMarcus Beasley is older than he is. And these guys were getting calls, and Benny wasn't. At the time when they really could have used a creative, aggressive, because look at how he played defense last year. You know, he worked both sides of the ball extremely hard. and nothing. And it just seems like, I don't want to say that that Klinsmann was doing it just to prove who was in charge, but it sometimes feels like that. It's hard not to wonder, is he just digging in to show that he's the one running the team, and then he's not going to take anybody else's counsel except his own.
And that's what it seems like, Steve. But to me, here's the question. I'm wondering if guys like Bradley, Dempsey, Jones, all these veterans on Team USA's squad don't speak up, don't say something behind the scenes to Jurgen, or even go past Jurgen and talk to Sunil Gulati and say, hey, look here, Benny belongs here, Benny deserves a shot, along with Dax McCarty, along with fill in the other blank who you might think might deserve a shot, because Jurgen is stubborn, Jurgen is really determined to do it his way or forget it, he's not going to do it, and I feel that he is going to live and die with certain situations like this, and I think his time is coming. I think 2016 is a massive year for him. World Cup qualifying, the competitions that are coming, and I don't think if he doesn't get off on the right foot that people are going to let their foot off the gas pedal. They're going to keep calling for his head, and Sunil Gulati is going to have to do something, Steve.
Yeah, we keep saying that, and I thought it was going to happen after the way the team just fell apart in the Gold Cup last year. And it was just, in fairness to the players, that roster was just I don't want to say a hot mess, but it just kept getting tinkered with during the Confederation Championship. And you don't do that as a manager. You don't play toy soldiers with your back line, especially, okay, you're out and you're in, you're out, you're in. And people were howling it. I mean, absolutely howling, especially when they dropped semifinal and then dropped the third place match. I was stunned that he kept his job then, because if you come a cropper like that in your Confederation Championship, every other country in the world, you're gone. You're absolutely gone. And then they get to the CONCACAF Cup final against Mexico, and they lose that. And the extension still holds. And we've said this before. I don't think that contract extension should have been given before the 2014 World Cup. I mean, you coach from tournament to tournament every place else in the world. So you would think that if things don't go well this year, then matters would finally come to a head. But they haven't in the past. As far as guys jumping the chain of command, yeah, I think they're trying to be good soldiers. One, because they want to play, and if you get outside the good graces, then you don't play. So I think they're going to respect the chain of command and not jump that. But I get at a loss for words, because I just don't see why the roster has not reflected guys who are doing well in MLS, and B, why the situation stays as it is, even with the run of form in recent tournaments.
Steve, let me ask you this. We heard, I think it was a few days ago or last week, the owner of the Portland Timbers, champions of MLS, have some comments towards Jurgen Klinsmann, and not really positive comments. I haven't heard anything from Peter Vermees. We've heard of Bruce Arena chime in and time again. And we're starting to hear more and more people. I remember last year here, Greg Vanney talking about Bradley and Jurgen, and the way Jurgen wants to use him in comparison to the way Greg Vanney wants to use Bradley. So we're not only hearing it from players that aren't getting called into camp, but we're also hearing it from, owners, coaches, on and on. Sooner or later, something's got to give. You
would think so, but Gulati seems really dug in, and apparently that's a hill he's chosen to defend and I guess die on if need be, because he has not budged off of his support publicly, or even from what I've heard back channel, he's not budged off his support from Klinsmann, support for Klinsmann. So it's a situation you wouldn't seem to find any place else in the world game. And yeah, there's a groundswell. There's a howling groundswell, to mix metaphors, to make a change, and it's just not happening. So every time I think, okay, it has to happen, it's going to happen, surely this has to be some kind of last, final, ultimate, really I mean it this time straw, and it's not.
As we close it out, let me ask you this, Steve. I mean, Sporting Kansas City and its fans take a backseat to no one. I haven't heard of any USA games upcoming to be played there at Sporting Park in the near future or in 2016 at all. But if it does change and they, put a game there in Kansas City and Jurgen's still in charge, I don't think that's going to be a pretty place for Jurgen to show up, especially with all that's going on with Benny and the way he's treated him.
Yeah, I think it'll be a situation where they support the team but not the coach. I mean, because you do have guys, Matt Beasler is still a mainstay of that team, and people do want to see the national team do well. They want to see guys who are in form playing. They want to see people given a chance to show what they can do after killing it in MLS or in Lehigh's case at Nottingham Forest. And I think it's going to be one of those things where they cheer the team and they're not really fond of the coach.
Steve, just before we let you go, very quickly, what's the vibe? What's the buzz there in regards to the Swoop Rangers coming and getting ready to play in the USL 2016 season? Is there a good vibe out there in the community? Are people anticipating to show up to a few games? What's the word on the street there?
I think so. People, when the announcement was made, fans really reacted positively. I think a lot of people are going to want to go out and see those USL games, especially when you think about it, when Oklahoma City comes to town and Jimmy Nielsen is coaching. St. Louis FC comes to town, and there's that rivalry between Kansas City and St. Louis. I think it's a great step for Sporting to take. And there's that vertical integration that they've talked about for years. Now they've got the senior club, they've got the USL side, they've got their academy. They're still working on that PDL side in Southwest Kansas in Garden City. So I think it's just one more step that really is I don't want to say the brand, the Sporting brand, and the associated brands are really ingrained in Kansas City now. And I think Swope Park Rangers are just going to be another part of that. And again, people are excited to see these guys coming up who are going to contend for spots on the senior squad someday. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens this year.
And I'm looking forward to watching Mark Dos Santos, who I've seen up and close, and he's a good friend of the show and of mine, and I know his brother. I think he's going to do a marvelous job there, and I would not be one bit surprised if Peter Vermees one day decides to go overseas to take a job there with a club, that he moves right up there to Sporting Kansas City, because this guy is a bright young mind, and he's going to do a lot of great things with those young players. Steve, we really appreciate you taking time to join us once again. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you throughout the 2016 season as it continues to get ready for.
All right, Anthony, thanks again for having me on. It's always good to chat with you.
Pleasure. That is Steve Brisendine of MLSsoccer.com, a class act, a gentleman and a friend of mine, and a guy that knows Kansas City inside out when it comes to MLS. Stay tuned. Coming back, we're going to talk with Kyle McCarthy of Fox Soccer. We'll get his thoughts on the comings and goings, Clint Irwin trade. We'll talk about Benny and the comments he made. We'll also talk about Pirlo. We'll talk about Kaká and all the comments that were made at MLS Media Day. So stay tuned right here on Red Card. Coming back, we'll talk with Kyle McCarthy of Fox Soccer right here on Red Card.